describing themselves specifically as superior because they are Jewish. That is a part of the story that is difficult to talk about, but is very explicit through many of these emails. There's an email exchange about the tax code. Are there any changes to the tax code in 2017, the Trump's tax law, that are going to be advantageous? Bad for the goys, but good for us. I mean, this kind of stuff. So Epstein writes that he just got a note from Bob Pyrie, who asked me if I thought Murray Gell-Mann would make a good candidate for the Zodiac. What's the Zodiac, you might ask? Well, as you know, he says, it's one of those last secret type societies. The Zodiac is one of the really cool ones. There are 12 members at any one time. It is still very secret. They do really cool stuff, but mostly since they are all very old, it's just dinners in exotic locations. I can't tell you all the 12 members because I don't know who they all are, but I know Paul Volcker is one. Bob Pyrie and I think Tom Brokaw. Anyway, the only way to get in is if somebody dies. There are obviously no minorities or women allowed. Anyway, let me know what you think. Okay, I didn't have Tom Brokaw. I mean, we don't know if he actually was in this group, but he's speculating that he's in this group. I didn't have him on my bingo card for showing up in the files. I certainly didn't have former chair of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, on my bingo card as showing up in this way as member of a secret society. And what ends up being a weird subtext, not even the main event in a lot of these emails, is the very explicit racism, in addition to the obvious sexism, and the race science that is spoken about by these people who are heads of the best college and oldest college in the United States of America, heads of our financial institutions, deeply involved in tax policy, having dinners with quote unquote Schumer. I mean, it feels like, for me, one of the more enduring takeaways of this, in addition to the obvious cruelty and depravity of the victimization of girls, is the openness, the obviousness with which some of the worst people in the world, with all of these prejudices and biases, have been presenting themselves as vanguards of liberalism and designing our society to benefit themselves, at the same time that they posture as the vanguard of the left and liberalism. Heads of a so-called liberal institution like Harvard University and Larry Summers. And at the same time, to be told by these same people, I mean, again, like I mentioned, Larry Summers had to step down from being president because he said women just aren't trying hard enough, and that's not why they're not in the sciences. I mean, the irony of, frankly, as a Black person, being told constantly that any kind of achievement gap, racial achievement gap, is a consequence of individual grit, when this entire email exchange just reads as these elites oftentimes describing themselves specifically as superior because they are Jewish. That is a part of the story that is difficult to talk about, but is very explicit through many of these emails. Designing the system, there's an email exchange about the tax code. Are there any changes to the tax code in 2017, the Trump's tax law, that are going to be advantageous? Bad for the goys, but good for us. I mean, this kind of stuff. And the two-sidedness of knowing how much planning is going into the back end of the system to advantage a small few, while a narrative is being promulgated that personal responsibility and grit and achievement and are you ordering too much DoorDash is why people are suffering, is galling, frankly.
Listen, these people are monsters. Paul Volcker, for example, when he decided to create the Volcker shock in the early 1980s, it destroyed dozens of countries in the global south that were suddenly forced to pay usurious loans back to these awful worldwide banking institutions. Nobody has ever tried to calculate the amount of people that killed, but it must be in the tens or even hundreds of millions. So if they're willing to create that amount of suffering to benefit just a tiny handful of people and corporations, it shouldn't be surprising that they're willing to do all sorts of horrific sex acts with people and then throw them to the side and even quite possibly in a lot of the files, kill them. To postulate as a moral leader when doing this, the level of self-confidence, it really beggars belief, because these people are entirely mediocre. These people are all living in the 19th century with their beliefs on race, on gender, on everything. There's an awful lot of race science in these emails. There is a huge amount of eugenics from Epstein and all these other billionaires. They're all interested in populating the world with their sperm. Elon Musk is into this. Bill Gates. I mean, I didn't put this into a lot of the reporting that I've done on Gates and his proclivities in the last few years, but he is extremely interested in stopping black and brown people from having children all around the world to try to, further the human race and what he sees. Epstein also, as you said, there's a lot of Jewish supremacy in there. When Bill Gates is talking about using his health programs to save the lives of poor people in Africa, Epstein is retorting like, this is some Catholic bullshit. He doesn't believe that, each life is sacred. He doesn't believe, evidently from his actions, but also in his words, that, human life is sacred and worthwhile. And what comes out of this when we're talking about all these little cliques that are forming the Zodiac Club, etc., the ruling elite in the United States and around the globe really is a very small circle of extremely powerful individuals. They see each other as part fundamentally of the same team, which is us against them, the 1% against the 99%. And that's why a lot of the top journalists are probably in those positions in the first place. And their relationship with Epstein is just one indicator of that.